What if the extra payment you're making on debt today is the exact reason you'll have to borrow money again next month? Picture this. You just finished your best quarter in 3 years. There's $180,000 sitting in your profit account, and you decide to put every dollar of it towards your biggest loan. It feels like you're finally getting ahead. Then retainage gets delayed. A major customer pays 30 days late. Payroll is due Friday, and a key subcontractor is threatening to walk unless he gets paid. Suddenly, you're back at the bank borrowing the same money you just used to pay down debt, plus interest. That isn't debt reduction. That's debt recycling. The problem isn't that you're paying down debt. The problem is doing it before the business has enough cash protection to keep operating. In this episode, I'll show you how to use Profit First to reduce construction debt without starving your jobs, shortchanging your crew, or creating the next cash crisis. We'll cover how much cash you should protect first, when profit is truly available for debt reduction, and how to decide which debt should be paid off next. I'm Wade Carpenter with Carpenter Company CPAs. We help contractors make more money, keep more of it, and build permanently profitable construction businesses. Let's talk about how to get out of debt without putting yourself right back into it. Most advice about using quarterly profit for debt payoff sounds smart as a whip. Take your profit distribution and apply it to debt reduction every single quarter. Simple, clean, aggressive.
But construction cash doesn't work that way. Your profit might still be trapped in retainage. Your biggest receivable could be 60 days out. That sub, who's been waiting 3 weeks, is about to walk. And if he does, your schedule and your margin blow up together. So you raid next quarter's profit account to cover this quarter's crisis. Then you do it again next quarter, and the quarter after that. Here's the back of the napkin math. If you're reborrowing 50% of what you pay down each quarter, your actual debt reduction rate is half what you think it is. A 2-year payoff plan becomes 4 years. A 4-year plan becomes never. Think about this like pouring a foundation. You don't pour concrete on frozen ground and hope for the best. You prep the site first. Same thing with debt reduction. You need a solid base before you start building anything permanent. PFCC solves this by anchoring profit distributions to actual cash milestones. Substantial completion, retainage releases, major collection events, not arbitrary calendar dates. And it protects reserve floors, so debt elimination doesn't create a liquidity crisis that forces you right back into borrowing.
Once you've got cash discipline locked down, you need to pick which debt dies first.
PFCC gives you 2 approaches, and both are smarter than smallest balance first or highest rate first, because they account for operational impact. The first approach is the debt snowball with Profit Assist. It targets the smallest high-impact debts first, and pay attention to those 2 words. High impact. Not necessarily the smallest balance. The debts that unlock the most operational relief when they're gone. Quick example. You got a $60,000 vendor line and a $35,000 credit card. Normal debt snowball says, kill the credit card first because it's smaller. But PFCC says if that vendor line is tied to lien rights or supplier terms that are strangling your projects, you kill that one first, even though it's bigger, because eliminating it unlocks better payment terms, reduces lien exposure, and improves your bonding capacity. Think about leverage, not just numbers. That vendor line might be costing you way more than the 8% interest you're paying. The second approach is the debt ladder with profit-assisted paydown. This one is for contractors who like to plan their work and work their plan. You create a strategic sequence that balances speed, morale, and risk reduction. The ladder becomes your route. Quarterly profit is the fuel. Here's the difference. Snowball prioritizes quick wins and momentum. Ladder prioritizes strategic impact and long-term positioning. Both methods require the same preconditions: owner pay restored, reserve floors met, leverage within policy. Choose based on whether your team needs morale wins or strategic positioning more. But either way, you're not just throwing darts at a debt board and hoping something sticks.
Here's where most contractors get their britches in a twist. They want to send every profit dollar to debt because it feels righteous and aggressive.
But aggressive without smart is just stupid with energy. Let's do the math right quick. Your base reserve floor is 2 to 4 months of operating expenses, and that's not negotiable. If you burn $250,000 a month in OpEx, payroll, utilities, insurance, office rent, vehicle payments, software, you need $750,000 in reserves before you start playing debt payoff hero. But wait, here's the construction-specific part. If your contract mix includes large or slow retainage, you raise that floor even higher. Let me show you what I mean. Monthly OpEx burn, $250,000. Base floor at 3 months comes to $750,000. Current retainage outstanding is $200,000. Slow pay, 90 days or more typical. That adjusts your floor to $750,000 plus a $150,000 buffer. $900,000 minimum. Why the adjustment? Because retainage isn't really your money until it clears the bank. If you count it as available cash and use it for debt payoff, you'll hit a wall the next time you need to cover payroll or subpayments. Think of it like water pressure in a high-rise building. You need enough pressure at the bottom to get water to the top floors. If you drain the reservoir too low, the top floors go dry. And in construction, that means payroll failures and subpayment problems that force you right back into emergency borrowing. The reserve floor is your insurance policy against your own enthusiasm. When retainage gets delayed, and it will, you'll still have cash to make payroll, pay subs, and keep the lights on while you wait for the money to show up.
Smart debt reduction in construction requires guardrails because this business is like driving a mountain road in the fog. You need boundaries that keep you from going over the edge.
Guardrail number 1 is your debt-to-backlog ratio. Set a policy. Your total interest-bearing debt should not exceed X months of gross margin from signed backlog. This anchors your leverage to work you can actually execute, not dreams and wishes. Here's a quick test. You got $2 million in debt and $100,000 in monthly gross margin from signed work. That's a 20-month ratio. If your policy limit is 12 months, you're over-leveraged. You're betting on work you haven't won yet. That's not a business strategy, that's gambling. Guardrail number 2 is a refi gate with a reserve test. Only refinance if, after closing costs, you'll still hold at least 2 months of OpEx reserves, and the payment reduction exceeds your threshold. Quick example. Current payment, $5,200 a month. Refi payment, $4,800 a month. Savings, $400 a month. Closing costs, $15,000. Post-closing reserves, $850,000, and you need $900,000. Decision, no. The paper win drains too much liquidity. A paper win that leaves you cash-starved is like winning the lottery and going broke paying the taxes. Not worth it. Guardrail number 3 is lien-waiver cadence. Pair vendor payment releases with executed lien waivers on the same schedule. Clean receivables mean better cash flow, which means less temptation to borrow mid-project when collections get slow. Here's the construction-specific truth. Clean AR improves cash flow by 15 to 25% in most trades. Better cash flow means you're not choosing between paying subs and paying debt. You can do both in the right sequence without creating new problems.
All right, let's get practical. Here's the step-by-step process that keeps you out of trouble while you attack your debt.
Step 1. Inventory and target selection. List every interest-bearing debt. Balance, minimum payment, rate, term, and most important, operational impact. That vendor line affecting lien rights, that tax liability affecting bonding, those might be worth hitting before the smaller credit card, even if the card has a higher rate. Step 2. Milestone-based timing. Here's where PFCC gets construction smart. Align your quarterly profit distribution with a job milestone. Substantial completion, retainage release, major receivable collection. Same quarterly rhythm, but you're working with actual cash, not promised cash. Step 3. Run your guardrail check. Before you write any checks, confirm 3 things. Is your owner pay restoration sequence satisfied? Payroll stable? Owner comp funded? OpEx reserves solid? Is your reserve floor intact, including retainage adjustments? Is your leverage within your debt-to-backlog policy? All 3 must be green to proceed. If any are red, you fix those first before profit touches debt. Step 4. Allocate and apply. If all preconditions are met, apply the quarterly profit to your current debt target, the one at the top of your snowball or ladder. If your reserve floor is breached, use the profit to rebuild reserves first and resume debt payoff next quarter. This is discipline over emotion. The plan works because it's predictable, not because it's exciting. Step 5. Document and iterate. Track your progress, update your ladder, and keep an eye on any guardrail shifts. Backlog changes, new high-impact debts, refi opportunities. Construction is a moving target, so your debt plan needs to be flexible enough to handle changing conditions without losing direction.
Here's the brutal truth. If you can't keep projects stable while paying down debt, you'll just borrow it all back.
First, maintain your JobEx discipline. Pay subs and suppliers on a predictable, reliable cadence. Nothing creates expensive cash fires faster than unreliable payments to the people doing your work. A reliable sub costs 10 to 15% less than a replacement sub every single time. And you don't lose schedule days hunting for backup labor. JobEx, that's job expenses. The money tied directly to projects needs its own account, separate from operating expenses. When you mix JobEx and OpEx, you lose visibility and you start making bad decisions under pressure. Second, feed a dedicated CapEx reserve. Fund equipment purchases through a dedicated CapEx reserve fed from operating expenses. Never from JobEx, never from profit earmarked for debt. New truck fever and tax season are the #1 killers of debt payoff plans. Keep CapEx money separate so it can't hijack your debt progress. Third, follow the owner pay restoration sequence. Every quarter, in this exact order: stabilize payroll, fund owner comp to minimum, rebuild OpEx reserves, then resume profit distributions to debt. The napkin test. If you can't afford to pay yourself, you can't afford to pay down debt. Fix the business first. This sequence protects the business and keeps your payoff plan credible. Skip it to accelerate debt payoff, and you risk payroll failures that force new borrowing, undoing all your progress.
Let me show you what this looks like with real numbers.
Here's the setup. Monthly OpEx burn, $250,000. Reserve floor policy, 3 months or $750,000, plus a retainage buffer, bringing it to $900,000. Current OpEx reserves, $950,000. So the floor is met with a $50,000 cushion. Profit account balance, $180,000. Target debt, a $60,000 vendor line. High impact because it eliminates lien exposure and improves supplier terms. For milestone timing, you align the profit distribution with a scheduled retainage release mid-quarter. The cash is materially available. You're not making promises based on hope. For the guardrail check, owner pay is stable. The OpEx floor is met with surplus. Debt to backlog is within policy, and there are no refi opportunities this quarter. For allocation, apply the $180,000 profit distribution. $60,000 goes to the vendor line, paid in full. The remaining $120,000 is reserved for the next ladder target, or additional floor buffer if retainage patterns are tightening. The outcome: vendor line eliminated, lien exposure reduced, supplier terms improve. Next quarter, you move to the second target on your ladder, pending guardrail retest. The key insight: by waiting for the retainage release, you used real cash, not promised cash. By maintaining the reserve floor, you kept operations stable throughout. That's the difference between a system and a hope.
Most contractors are stuck in debt recycling because they're using a system built for a predictable cash flow in a business with lumpy cash flow. PFCC fixes this by adding construction-specific guardrails that protect operations while you attack your debt.
Standard debt payoff looks like this: profit, then debt, then hope for the best. PFCC debt payoff looks like this: cash milestone, then guardrail check, then reserve floor, then profit, then high impact debt. The difference is protection against construction's lumpy cash reality. You can accelerate debt payoff with quarterly profit, but only when you do the construction math first. Reserve floors, milestone timing, and operational guardrails aren't obstacles to debt freedom. They're what make debt freedom possible without destroying your business in the process. Your debt plan should work like a good foundation. Solid, measured, and built to last. No shortcuts, no wet concrete. Just disciplined progress, one quarter at a time.
Here's the bottom line. The goal is not to make the biggest debt payment possible this quarter. The goal is to pay off debt permanently without having to borrow it all back when construction cash flow gets tight. Before you send profit towards debt, ask 3 questions. Is payroll and owner's compensation properly funded? Is the company's reserve floor still protected? And is this real cash that has already been collected, not retainage, receivables, or profit that exists only on paper? If the answer to any of those is no, protect the business first. Then, when those guardrails are satisfied, use your available profit to attack the debt that creates the greatest operational relief, not necessarily the smallest balance or even the highest interest rate. That may be a vendor line restricting your terms, a tax obligation affecting your bonding capacity, or a loan payment draining cash every month. Debt freedom is not built by making one heroic payment. It is built through disciplined payments the company can afford to make and never needs to borrow back. If you want the complete construction-specific Profit First system, pick up Profit First for commercial construction on Amazon. And if you want help implementing this in your company, visit profitfirstconstruction.com. Tell me in the comments, which debt would create the most relief in your business if you could eliminate it tomorrow? Subscribe for more practical guidance on construction cash flow profitability and building a stronger contracting business. Protect the operation, follow the guardrails, and make every debt payment permanent.